Good afternoon and welcome again to my office. We enter into the subject of simplicity. In a recent discussion with my daughter, we spoke of the growing complexity and emotional fatigue that people experience simply trying to sort life out, inundated by information that is often unverifiable and choices deemed critical as to the best approach seem to almost leave one in a catatonic state, unable to make decisions at all. One explanation for this increasingly common phenomena is what has come to be called information overload. As one unnamed source wrote, information overload is a state of being overwhelmed by the amount of data presented for one's attention or processing. It refers to receiving too much data for a given decision, but also the constant inundation of data from many sources that is characteristic of modern life. According to the APA Dictionary of Psychology, information overload is the state that occurs when the amount or intensity of information exceeds the individual's processing capacity, leading to anxiety, poor decision-making, and other undesirable consequences. If this sounds like you, you're not alone. I would suppose those who are least aware of it may have perhaps been marginalized or compartmentalized into a very small space indeed. It would seem that in theory, information and the abundance of it is just what the doctor ordered for us to navigate life and to give us choices. In fact, the Bible itself is filled with exhortations to gain knowledge and chides those who refuse it, such as the wise lay up knowledge from Proverbs 10. But there is a radical difference between the gaining of knowledge for the purpose of enriching ourselves and expanding our choices and the gaining of knowledge toward acquiring wisdom. On this point, these two part company like a fork in the road. It should be pointed out that God's Word in the Bible presents wisdom as living skill, which is the ability to see clearly through the clutter of life with the confidence to make good decisions. The difference then between what the Bible presents as knowledge and knowledge elsewhere is all the difference between searching through a pre-ordered file or through a mass of contradictory material scattered all about. Let me be quick to add that the Bible is not naive about the complexity of your world, but unlocks its conundrums and its mysteries in order to establish order and simplicity. It achieves this through its revelation of timeless truths to those who will receive it. James wrote, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all." This gracious offer is due to the fact that God desires to guide and direct those choices we would make toward a life of simplicity. Now, what I mean by simplicity here is the knowledge of who I truly am, what I truly need, and the contentment that lives easily amongst a disordered and frantic world. That simplicity comes from timeless information God has revealed in His holy word, the Bible. So, how novel is that? The Bible contends that it contains all things necessary for life and godliness, for in the practice of those things, God establishes the fruits of a simple life, which enjoys the delight, peace, and order that comes from such a life. Consider that David in Psalm 19 wrote of such gracious instruction when he listed the salient features of God's revelation. To list just a few, he spoke of the law of God being perfect, for it restores. His testimony of the law is sure, providing living skill. His precepts or guidelines bring joy to the heart. His commands open our eyes towards what is true and good and alerts us to evil. David then sums up what he has written by saying, "These truths are more desirable than wealth and are sweeter than honey. There is a curious statement at the end of the book of Daniel, from which God tells him in the last days people will run to and fro, and that knowledge would increase. Perhaps this syncs with Paul's word to Timothy, stating that in the end, people would be always learning and never able to come to the full knowledge of the truth, seemingly to describe people being swept up in a maelstrom of various points of views, opinions, beliefs, choices, and options that often shift and change with the times. Woo! Why not close your browser and turn to the simplicity of God's Word that points us toward His Son Jesus, who will someday soon deliver this fallen world from its doomed self-defeating conundrums, ushering in a world of order and sublime simplicity to all who have placed their hope and trust in Him for salvation. I heartily recommend, for the sake of sanity, to read His Word, for in it alone you will discover rest for your souls and choices that are clear. And thank you for listening to this. May you have a blessed day.